Hello my friends and welcome. I've been severely neglecting the channel, but we are back. Here's an interview with Nightreigns director Ishizaki. From Software is pivoting a little with this upcoming title. Let's jump into the interview and find out what it's all about. As a developer, I had many ideas for what could potentially be new games during the development of past titles I've worked on, including Elden Ring. This time I stepped up as new director. I was given the opportunity to direct this idea for Nightreign. We've always been seen as a company that makes these Soulslikes, or this kind of traditional formula of Souls-like games. And so I saw this as an opportunity to do something different, to challenge both myself and the company, to build something new while still using what we've cultivated with our previous title. Also personally, I enjoy these co-op multiplayer experiences, and I wanted to make something that was very much focused on that with Nightreign. I enjoy a whole manner of games, from shooters to board games and MMOs. So basically we're taking inspiration from a whole range of genres and titles. IGN asks if the speedrunning community has also been an influence on the creation of this game. Ishizaki says, "It would be a lie to say there's nothing like that's inspired Nightreign, or that there's some inspiration there. I enjoy these elements of not just Souls games, but other games where you have these challenging elements, or speedrun tactics. It's not just applied to speedrunning, it's like optimizing the gameplay from the player's perspective. How to best optimize the experience and get the most out of it and clear it in the best way possible, or the quickest way possible. I enjoy those elements, and I feel like this is a good opportunity to share my love for that with players. I'm glad if this sort of idea is coming through in Nightreign." IGN asks if Miyazaki has had any input in the game, or is he strictly hands-off on the project. So initially I took the idea to Miyazaki, who gave it the green light. He was a little involved in that initial concept phase of the game, but after that he gave me full reign. We'd like fans to think of Nightreign as an Elden Ring spin-off first and foremost. The story is completely separate and parallel to the world of Elden Ring. If you had to tie it in some way, we had the events of the Shattering in the original game. After the events of the Shattering, this is a completely separate branch of Elden Ring's story. We understand that there's a great deal of emotional attachment to the story of Elden Ring, that a lot of the fans have, so we didn't want to encroach on that too much. We wanted it to coexist with the existing story, and for players both familiar and new to enjoy both of these stories separately. IGN: "So does this mean Martin has no influence on Nightreign's story or world?" Ishizaki says that's correct. The game is designed to be played as a 3-person team, but you can also play it as a solo player. The reason why we went with a 3-player focus was that we wanted to retain that sense of accomplishment you get from battling a boss together or from conquering a map together, and that sense of enjoyment. But we wanted to recreate that in a fresh way, and we felt like focusing on a 3-player co-op experience would provide a brand new sense of accomplishment with it. This was largely a game balancing decision, rather than a game design decision, so it came as a development progressed. You know, we found that while we wanted each player to have that sense of accomplishment, that sense of rewarding co-op gameplay, this was like a sweet spot with 3 players in order for it not feel too overwhelming or too busy. It allows each player to go off their own potentially and cover a bit of the map, but also to, that final experience of coming together. 3 players felt like the sweet spot. IGN asks if this is their first time as game director, and what their previous roles were. I've been involved with development on FromSoft games since the original Dark Souls, where I was a level designer, and on Bloodborne I was level designer and battle designer, and on Dark Souls 3 and Elden Ring I was combat designer. IGN asks about spirit ashes. They do exist in some capacity, but it's a little different to how they're played in Elden Ring. There's going to be 8 playable characters in the final game, and one of those characters uses spirit ash, sort of a spiritual buddy as a gameplay mechanic. IGN asks about challenge and skill levels. We put a lot of faith in our players regardless of their skill level. We believe that anyone can beat these games, if they just go in with an open mind and a will to try. We've also incorporated the relic system, where you get these rewards from each run as you experienced yesterday. And even from a mildly or less successful run, you can get these relics and gradually upgrade your roster and build up these characters for your next session. So we hope this gives new players an incentive to keep on trying. IGN says, "I'm curious about the 3-day structure and how it came about. Initially, we set out to make Nightreign. We wanted what we're calling a condensed RPG experience. We wanted to take all those elements from Elden Ring that players enjoyed, like the exploration, the building of the character, fighting tough bosses, the sense of discovery, and condense that into a shorter, tighter play session. Also, we wanted to include this idea of having peaks and valleys to the gameplay. So there's gotta be a flow in there. Bring the players up for the highs, and then it gets a little easier, and they get to enjoy this gradual flow to the gameplay. And again, this was a balanced decision that came through development, but eventually that settled on a 3-day structure. There's gonna be 8 boss types of the final boss in the final game, and as you progress through, these will be gradually unlocked and become available to fight. IGN asks, if you were just to redo the same one, it's not a harder version of the boss to fight or anything like that. It's always the same boss each time you get back to it. Something like these new Game Plus elements or subsequent play elements, we're currently still considering how to field that, I guess. IGN asks if they think it's risky to make a multiplayer game. We don't tend to look at the industry and base our game design or our concerns on what's going on in that sort of more general sense. We feel like if we're gonna make something we're passionate about, and that we wanna make it and we wanna enjoy playing, we trust the users will share in that experience and hopefully enjoy it as well. Also, we wanna be clear that Nightreign is not a live service game. Once you buy Nightreign, you get the complete package. Everything is unlockable out of the gate. So we want it to be clear that this is what we wanted to make. It's not intended as a live service game. So there will not be a whole new map type depending on the boss you select, but there will be some quite drastic changes to the map that occur as you progress through the game. The reason for this, we wanted to keep this experience quite condensed and concentrated so that players could learn and adjust and create that most optimized play to enjoy that sort of new sense of accomplishment and discovery with Nightreign. Learning within those confinements is what we aimed for. IGN asks, so is there an ultimate boss to fight who is behind the Night Tide? Yes, there's a final boss at the end of it, and they do have some sort of connection to the Night Tide and the encroaching night, so we hope players look forward to discovering that. IGN asks if there's any sort of modes planned like PvP, Battle Royale, or something like that. Currently there are no plans. We wanted to first and foremost concentrate on this 3-player co-op experience, so that's the main focus for now. IGN says they're curious about Merc. So with Merc, you'll be able to purchase new relics. You'll also be able to perform relic rites, which allow you to switch around the color coding for each character, so potentially give different characters new relics. You'll be able to purchase gestures, and you'll be able to purchase new character skins as well. IGN. Speaking of the character classes, I found the 4 different ones that we played with yesterday were really quite unique compared to the base classes from Elden Ring. Was that the case from the beginning? Or did the game begin with, warrior and samurai, stuff like that, and then evolve from there? Ishizaki. So the reason, first of all, just some context for having these set characters, was we wanted to create this multiplayer experience that you could just jump into very quickly and casually, without worrying about character creation or character build off the bat. So with that, as the kind of initial staple for the design, we set about designing these different characters and their specialities. And quite quickly we landed on their unique skills and ultimate arts. And we figured that we wanted more of an action gameplay focus, rather than landing them in the sort of preset type of character, like there's the mage or the warrior or the tank. We wanted them to each feel unique in their gameplay, and in their skills and abilities from the get-go. IGN asks, I'm curious about the random nature of the map. It seems like the initial landing area was always kind of more or less the same, with the same ruins to quickly get some XP, but then it seems a bit more random beyond that. Is that by design to make sure the players get off to the right foot? So the random elements in each session basically come down to anything you find dotted around the map. So the weapons, the enemies that appear, the bosses that appear, the random events that take place, and the points of interest, the key locations that pop up around the map. So these are generally randomized throughout each session. IGN. I found that I only used the Spectral Hawk maybe once or twice. I'm just curious, at any point during development, was there a thought of letting players use it manually at any time like the glider in Breath of the Wild? Or was it always going to be a fixed point designed to be shortcuts, to be very specific directions or locations? We did try a more free-form approach to using the Spectral Hawk to get around initially, but we found eventually that it felt surprisingly like a chore. And it also kind of inhibited the freedom of approach that the rest of the game provides. So when the players could be kind of challenging themselves to go off in this direction, or choose this route because they've chosen this boss fight, and that's sort of what they've got available to them at the moment. They would instead be able to ignore a lot of the map, and they'd end up taking very similar routes, or they'd end up just flying around for the sake of it, and they would sort of just impede on the intended game design. So we decided to keep it a little more streamlined, a little more confined to what you experienced yesterday. IGN. That makes a lot of sense. One that I did use, I used to reach a giant that was on a rooftop of a castle. It seemed very deliberately placed in that regard. Or was that just coincidence? Yeah, it is something similar to what you described. When we designed it, we had in mind something like a choice between directions. When you make the decision to make a big movement in one direction of the map, it's like, well, okay, I'll choose this spectral hawk, or this spectral hawk. This was intended to roughly guide the players in this direction. IGN. The Fell Omen kept spawning in a random event in a few of the sessions that we played yesterday, and we eventually just started luring it toward the site of grace so we could just keep re-upping our health and flasks while we fought. Do you consider that cheating, or is that a legitimate strategy? It's kind of cheating, but seeing as though you were on your own volition and agency, I think I'll give you that one. You're allowed that. IGN asks, the red corpses are a great source of loot. Who do they represent? So this is Nightreign's unique asynchronous online element. This is actually gear left from a previous player who died at that spot. So it's their way to leave their mark on the world and influence the session of another player, even if they happen to fail. You'll see phantoms running around occasionally, but you won't see messages left by other players like in Elden Ring. There's not a lot of time to stop and write a message. That's basically the intent there. IGN asks, do enemies respawn after the first day of a cycle? No, there's no respawning between days. There's no respawning when you visit the site of grace either. IGN asks, is there going to be cross-platform support? Ishizaki. Similar to the original Elden Ring, there will be cross-generational play, but not cross-platform play. So PS4 players can play with PS5 players, and Xbox One players can play with Xbox Series S and X, but not between platforms. IGN asks, do you intend Nightreign to just be a one-off? Or are you hoping that this style of game, not necessarily under the Elden Ring banner, but this style of game will become a staple for FromSoft in the future? We don't really have a plan in terms of, oh, we're going to make more spin-offs, or this is going to be a one-off, one-time thing. This was purely sort of a happenstance of me wanting to direct my own game, and wanting to use Elden Ring and that battle design that I took part as part of the base to this game, and my interest in online co-op games as well. So this just all came together nicely to build on, and what we've cultivated with Elden Ring. So that's why this is a spin-off. I can't really say for sure where we'll go in the future. I created Nightreign to be a new thrilling type of gameplay, with that familiar sense of accomplishment and overcoming tough odds that players are familiar with. So I hope these two things come together and provide a fresh and fun experience, so please look forward to it. Alright guys, that's the key points from the interview. I'm going to be posting a lot more videos from now on. Have fun and stay safe, my friends.